Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee on the 13th of January. Just ask all members of the committee, have you read all the pre-application information, some of which came in late? You're all happy? Okay. So, welcome to the meeting of White District Council Planning Committee on the 13th of January. Thank you for attending and watching online. I'm Councillor Bowe, Chairman of the Committee. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and is also being recorded. Details of how the recordings are stored and how long they are retained for are available via the Council's website. As part of this Council's commitment to reducing the use of paper, councillors and officers may use electronic devices during the meeting. Emergency procedures. There are no planned tests of the emergency alarm. If the alarm does sound, everyone present must leave by the designated exit route. If the preferred route is blocked, use of the nearest signed alternative route. Do not use the lift. Everyone must assemble at the designated point, which is in the central reservation in Regent Grove in front of the police station. Members of the public and press should report to a member of the Town Hall staff who will be wearing yellow fluorescent jackets, and councillors and officers should report to the committee officer. Please do not re-enter the building until the fire officer advises it's safe to do so. I have alongside me, to my right, Sophie Barbaloo, Principal Committee Services Officer, and to the extreme right, our legal advisor, Nigel Bell. To my left, we have Sandip Sahota, Business Manager, Erin Weatherstone, Principal Planning Officer, Adam Walker, Principal Planning Officer, and Millie Flynn, Senior Planning Officer. We've checked on the update report. Apologies and substitutes. Councillor Sinnott is substituting for Councillor Collins, and apologies have been received from Councillor Whiteman. Are there any other apologies? No. Members' declaration of interest. Anyone with a pecuniary interest will need to leave the room and will be called back in at the end of the item. Members are also reminded of a need to declare predetermination on any matter. May I have any declarations of interest? None. Site visits. Any member wish to record that they have undertaken a visit on their own for applications on this evening's agenda? Councillor Dixon.
Good evening, Chair. Yes, I made site visits to the application item number 6, 250816, and also in respect of item number 8, 251451. Didn't speak to anybody when I was there.
Thank you. Councillor Gifford.
Yes, I made a site visit to item number 7, W25 1061, 60 Brandon Parade.
Thank you. Councillor Yalaparanga.
I made site visit to item number 5, Aldi.
Thank you. We now need to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the 9th of December 2025. In line with our procedures, all members can vote on the approval of minutes, although they may not have been there at the meeting. Proposer, please. Councillor Kennedy, Secretary. Back there, can it be moved because somebody's going to hurt themselves? Thank you. So all those in favour of accepting the minutes? Thank you, that's unanimous. Now down to business. The procedure for each application will be as follows. Each application will have a presentation from a planning officer. This is followed by registered speakers who will be invited to address the committee. I must ask that all speakers stick to their allotted time. Please can all speakers speak directly into the microphones and if necessary, move the microphones closer to you and ensure there are no devices in the way of the microphone. This will enable you to be clearly heard both here and on YouTube. Following registered speakers, the committee will then debate the application. During the debate, members, including myself, may well raise technical questions and issues to which the planning officers or advisors may need to respond, and I will normally invite them to do so. Please can I remind everyone that no officer or councillor will be permitted to address the committee without my permission. The committee will then make its decision based on the information within the report, any representation at the meeting and the content of its debate. Once the decision is made, I will announce it after the vote. For the benefit of visitors attending a committee, all applications will be decided in accordance with the current National Planning Policy Framework and the Council's adopted local plan policies, which set out a presumption in favour of sustainable development unless there are material planning considerations that indicate otherwise. Applications are considered against policies contained in local neighbourhood development plans that have been approved following a public referendum. Applications in accord with the local plan will usually be permitted. Applications must only be refused where there are valid planning reasons for doing so. This will help to avoid legal challenges against decisions and avoid unnecessary legal costs to the Council and Council taxpayer. Please note that I've already agreed, if needed, the meeting will adjourn to a suitable point somewhere around 2 hours into the meeting to allow for a comfort break. Finally, whilst I and the committee members fully appreciate the importance of the decision being made this evening and that they may well generate strong feelings, I take this opportunity to remind everybody to remain calm and courteous at all times. There aren't any action points for me to update you on from the previous meeting, so we can now move forward with the first application, W/25/1451, 3 Horseshoes, Spring Hill, Bobenhall.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The application before members this evening is at the 3 Horseshoes pub, Spring Hill, Bobenhall. The application seeks permission for the erection of 2 gazebos to the front elevation, along with an extension to the existing front and side patio with an associated balustrade and access ramp. It should be noted that the works are part retrospective, and you'll see that from the site visit photos presented to you. The application has been brought to committee due to support from the Parish Council and a number of support comments received. Here is the site outlined in red. It's an existing public house located to the eastern side of Spring Hill. And the aerial image shows that it lies within a predominantly residential area, and it also lies within the conservation area. Moving to the plans, to the left we've got the existing site plan, and to the right the proposed site plan. You can see the extent of the patio to the side outlined in the blue, with the gazebos to the front and the access ramp to the rear of the blue highlighted area. Moving to elevations. The elevations don't show the existing balustrade to the front of the site. However, this will be present in the next slide. Members are able to see here the gazebos to the front elevation, along with the extent of the patio to the side of the public house. Front elevation photos for members. As you know, the works are part retrospective, with the gazebos and balustrade to the front there. And some street scene photos. And then the site for members to see. Summary of the main points. The proposals are considered to represent inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and the benefits presented are not considered to amount to very special circumstances. The works will enhance the character and appearance of the wider conservation area, which is less than substantial, to which no public benefits are considered to outweigh this harm. Furthermore, it has not been demonstrated that the development would provide an adequate level of off-street parking and would give rise to highway safety concerns, with an objection from the Highways Authority. It is considered that the adverse impacts of the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. It is therefore recommended that the application be refused. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the update report, and namely the removal of reason for refusal 4, which relates to the breach of the 45-degree line. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a number of speakers. First, I'll call on Councillor Jim Roberts from the Parish Council. You have 3 minutes.
Let's try that. Can you all hear me? Good. Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for inviting me to speak. I want to make it very, very clear, our ancient village of Bobenhall, our community, overwhelmingly wants these improvements to the 3 Horseshoes to go ahead. This has been evidenced by the massive support registered on the planning portal, over 70 supporters, and absolutely no objections, none. Unfortunately, against this overwhelming support in the community, the planning officer's report is, I hate to say, overwhelmingly negative. Pubs are closing all over the place, and I think the planning officer should be applauding this pub for surviving at all, creating jobs, and now proposing further sustainable development. The Three Horseshoes was closed for 2.5 years until these applicants bravely turned the tide just 3 years ago. They've restored it to life. When closed, the Three Horseshoes became a haven for criminal and other antisocial behaviour, and the parish council arranged for it to be securely barriered until the applicants took over, and we are very grateful. We believe that this proposal meets all the local policy, Warwick District Council planning policies. Ashley Spence, one of the two licensees, will be able to address that in significant detail. I think he's already submitted documents supporting that. There are some small debatable areas, but we wholeheartedly welcome what is really quite a minor project. Please pay close attention to the detailed arguments that Ashley will present, and hopefully I would ask you to approve the application in principle with potentially some conditions to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't normally have applause in the council chamber while we're in a planning meeting. In that case, I'll have to ask you to leave.
Oh, I'll leave, yeah, I'll certainly leave.
I'm not,
Please mark it down. Keith Long was told to be removed from the chamber.
because of,
My name, Ugnal member for 50 years. I'll leave, I'll leave. Shame we don't like people clapping.
thank you. And now move to Councillor Ben Edwards, who's got 30 seconds.
County Highways were asked to comment on this item, as they are for all items. They did an analysis. They did that analysis diligently. They identified some minor concerns with the with parking and local access, and have alleviated those concerns. The owner has spoken to me in good faith about his attempts to alleviate those concerns. I believe that you should ignore, in this case, County Highways and go with
Thank you. Realise it's short, but we keep everyone the same. Now call on Dr. Claire Holt, and you have 1 minute, 15 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this application is about safeguarding a vital community asset. Members may not be aware, although Jim Roberts has just highlighted the recent derelict past. The pub was abandoned and it became a hotspot for illicit drug activity, vandalism, and was a real risk of arson. Had to be boarded up, and it instilled fear for those living nearby, creating a highly visible eyesore at the entrance to the village, harming both the conservation area and the reputation of Bubbenall. The works undertaken to date, gazebos, patio improvements, safer fencing, have replaced what was actually a dangerous frontage and has made it a far more welcoming, family-friendly space. Old plastic fences were unsafe and out of character. The new boundary is now safer for families with small children. These additions are modest, reversible, and entirely in keeping with the established commercial use. On accessibility, the position is clear. The ramp is a reasonable adjustment to ensure all customers of all ages and abilities in the village can access the pub with dignity. An internal ramp is not feasible. The walkway inside is too narrow and would create a hazard. Supporting an accessible entrance aligns with both the Equality Act and, I'm sure, the Council's own commitments on inclusivity. The planning balance is overwhelmingly positive, removing a former crime-attracting eyesore, securing a valued rural business, supporting local jobs and strengthening social cohesion, providing a safe, accessible outdoor space. The community is telling you clearly, please support us. Thank you.
Now Now call on Mr Ashley Spence. Again, you have 1 minute 15.
Chair members, thank you. I'm Ashley Spence, operator of the Three Horseshoes. Members will have seen the document I emailed titled Planning Statement at Legal Representations in response to the officer's objections, which sets out our case in full. The proposal is a modest reversible accessibility-led improvement that delivers the first dignified disabled access to the pub's principal front lounge and patio area in the history of the pub, and is supported by the parish council, ward councillors and the whole village. On Greenbelt, the officer report relies heavily on a 30% rule of thumb from H14, which is for dwellings and not a fixed test. The correct approach is fact and degree, functional relationship, scale and effect on openness. The gazebos are lightweight, open-sided and sit within the existing development frontage. Not open countryside, so they are not material harm openness. On heritage, the conservation officer accepts harm is less than substantial, but the analysis overstates it and treats the benefits as private. The key benefits are public, Equality Act compliant access, inclusion, safeguarding and valued community facility, local employment and year-round community use.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now call on District Councillor Josh Payne, who has 5 minutes.
It's a good start. Thank you, Chair. I wanted to start, please, with a couple of slightly legalistic points, and I'm sure the legal advisor can put me right if I'm wrong on anything, because I don't want to say anything misleading. One of the key bits of legislation is the Town and Country Listed Buildings Act, and Section 72 of that Act talks about the desirability of preserving conservation areas, and that local authorities must have regard to the desirability of preserving the status quo in those areas. Likewise, there's a key bit of case law, which is the South Lakeland District Council case that says that, to put it slightly crudely, local authorities must be very strict when considering harm in conservation areas. But just to say to you as a committee, first of all, given the importance of that bit of legislation and the case law, the desirability of maintaining the status quo in this conservation area is clearly less and is much reduced if there are over 80 support comments on the planning portal. And likewise, the degree of harm subjectively is far, far less, because local people overwhelmingly are saying they want these upgrades to the pub. There's no doubt about that, and there isn't a single objection comment on the planning portal. So I appreciate what officers are saying in terms of their perspective and what they have to say in terms of government guidance, but subjectively, the development is one that local residents want, and one that can't really be considered to be doing a great deal of harm. The presumptions in the South Lakeland District Council case are rebuttable if there are exceptional circumstances. Now, I can understand what officers are saying about, in a very legalistic or technocratic sense, there not being exceptional circumstances here. But if you look at this planning application from a human point of view, in terms of human need and what the community needs, what individuals in that community need, I would say there are special circumstances, because the pub is doing so much good work with people in the community with limited mobility, elderly people who were experiencing social isolation, that the ramp upgrade that's proposed would make such a big difference to them accessing the whole of the pub, and I've been there and I've seen that firsthand. The pub is renting out a disabled room as part of its accommodation that is booked very often, and having that ramp in would make all the difference, I think, to the patrons using that room, which is a popular feature of the pub business. I'd just like to say as well, Mr. Spence has said with the planning conditions, if you do grant approval this evening, he's prepared to compromise, provided those conditions are sensible and reasonable. So he's not being completely inflexible. He's listened to what officers have said in terms of possible harms, and has said that he would accept some conditions as a compromise. In conclusion, we'll just stress again the overwhelming support that these applications have had from the community. And I think in those circumstances, if you look at the proper context to this as a committee, it would really be a breach of natural justice not to approve this. So please look at the context here and consider the human perspective and the necessity for elderly people with poor mobility to have the ramp upgrade. And I believe if you look at it that way, there is really no fair reason to refuse this. Thank you.
Thank you. Just call for a legal advice.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just address comments from two of the speakers we've heard from this evening? First of all, Councillor Ben Edwards suggested that you disregard the highway comments. That's, I'm afraid to say, quite an irresponsible comment. With respect, Councillor Edwards is not a highway engineer. He is not qualified to comment on highway matters. The local highway authority have given their advice, and their advice is that there are highway safety issues. If the committee were to approve this scheme, contrary to that highway advice, that is the only situation where the local planning authority could be liable if, God forbid, someone was injured or worse because you've approved something contrary to that advice. So can I ask that you don't disregard the advice of the local highway authority? Just responding to the last speaker, in terms of the level of harm to either a listed building or the conservation area, the number of people who support the scheme is absolutely irrelevant. It's not a democracy. It's a technical question, and you've obviously got the advice of your conservation officer and your planning officers. The level of support, I'm afraid, doesn't make it that there's no harm. That's just not correct. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, members. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I want some clarification how the proposal is disproportionate to Greenbelt, because this is a temporary structure.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of impact on Greenbelt, the officer report does set out that the assessment is carried out against the framework and in terms of local plan DS 18. Local plan policy H14, whilst is relevant to dwellings, gives an indicator of what is considered proportionate in terms of additions. The property does already benefit from a number of extensions. So we've got one in 1988 and then one more recently. I don't have any details of that because there's no relevant permissions as far as I can see. So we'd have to consider the cumulative harm against what is considered original. So taking into account those two extensions and the additions of the gazebos, which, as far as I'm aware, aren't considered temporary, they are permanent in nature, and as such are considered extensions. Cumulatively, it tips it over the 30%. Now, going back to policy H14, whilst it relates to dwellings, it does give us a good indication of what is proportionate. H14 sets out that the 30% is only a guidance, and again, the officer report sets out that yes, it is over the 30%, but it also sort of talks about, it also talks about the impact on openness in terms of the permanence of the structure and the additional bulk and mass to the front of the elevation.
This percentage is normally for residential properties, right? This is a pub. This is a commercial property. Does it have the same percentage as a residential property?
Again, the 30% rule as set out in H14 is for dwellings and it is only a guidance. but it gives the local authority an indicator of what is considered a proportionate addition. In the case of this application, it is over the 30% as set out in the guidance figure, and therefore we do consider it disproportionate.
Thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. First one related to what Councillor Yella-Pragada was asking about. It's, you say it's greater than 30% extension. Do you actually have a figure for how much increase it is from the original building?
Thank you, Chair. So a recent appeal within the district, an inspector set out that additions can be calculated in various formats. That could be footprint, floor area, external volume. For the case of this application, I've taken floor area as an indicator of what's considered disproportionate. The original floor area I've measured at approximately 475 metres squared. And as part of the assessment, it sets out that I've not included the platform to the front elevation because it's not enclosed, or it wasn't enclosed in nature. It didn't have a balustrade or any sort of other enclosing features. And the proposed floor area with the extensions and the balustrade and patio now included comes to 675 metres squared. So that's an approximate increase of 42%.
Okay, so it's 42% from the original structure, including the previous additions.
Yeah, so the original structure is how it lay in 1945. Anything beyond that has to be considered an extension.
Thank you. The second question I have, which is in the refusal reasons, number 2, it says no public benefits have been identified that to outweigh this harm. I find, in terms of what we've heard and what we've seen about this public house being of huge community benefit to residents there, not only in what it provides, but the fact that it's been rescued from dereliction, does that not count as a public benefit? Can that not be considered a public benefit?
Thank you, Chair. So it is my understanding, and legal might want to correct me if I am incorrect, is that the public benefits or the benefits that have been identified aren't public because they would benefit the business as a whole. In terms of the argument that's been put forward in terms of viability, officers are aware that the site does operate as a drinking establishment without the requirement for the works as part of this proposal.
Councillor Gifford.
Yes. I find that it's the impression one gets with a planning application is that it's either the officers have to make a decision, and indeed we have to make a decision, on a balance. Now, it isn't normal for us to be overwhelmingly in favour or overwhelmingly against any particular application. It's clear in this particular case that the pub is being really pulled forward by the present, by the applicant. It's very successful, and that comes across from the letters. The pub is important to the community, and is shown by the substantial letters of support. However, it also, the gazebos are, I would argue, intrusive, and I would argue that given that you could use the umbrellas or whatever could be used instead and would have a temporary aspect to them, that might be a way of doing it. the pub has clearly really turned itself around. And whilst you could argue that the success is something that should be supported by letting the balance go in favour of grant rather than refusal, I would argue that it also, what the success and the letters of support show, is that this pub is going to be successful, whether it has the gazebos and the patio and so or not. I don't think the people of Bubbenhall and the surrounding area are not going to turn up at the Three Horseshoes, which is clearly a very well-run and successful pub, just because it's got umbrellas rather than gazebos, or because it's not got the patio, which highways consider to be dangerous. I feel very sort of torn, and I think I suspect others on the committee may feel the same. But on balance, at the moment, I will listen to what others have to say. On balance, I feel the officers have come to the right conclusion, but it's a difficult one. Although it's only, as a number of people have said, it's only a minor project. And for that reason, I would turn that the opposite way from the way it was put by one of the speakers, who said it was a minor project and therefore should be granted. I feel it's a minor project and therefore it's not essential for the success of the pub. And therefore, given the balance in terms of highway safety and indeed the effect of the gazebos at the front, I feel that we probably should be considering going with the officer's recommendation, but I will listen to what others have to say before putting anything forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazel.
Yeah, so there seems to be a sort of a balance here between the enhancement of the functionality of the pub, which allows more customers and better business and a better resource for the community, and concerns about the appearance and the interpretation of Greenbelt policy. So, again, others have said this, but the use of this 30% guide about the extension, it seems to me the viability of the pub is stronger if it is a bit bigger and is able to guarantee better year-round usage. So it seems to me that is a benefit here, a social benefit, as well as a private benefit to the pub. And I really kind of take issue with the permanent and substantial structure argument. I've got decking and a gazebo in my garden, and I wish it was permanent, but it definitely isn't. Over the border from where I live in Solihull, battery energy storage schemes have been approved on the basis of temporary 40-year leases. These are commercial facilities in Greenbelt land. So if a 40-year lease is temporary, I find it hard to think that this is a permanent structure. So I do have some concerns with the officer interpretation of that. And I do have some sympathy with the community argument that this is an important resource, and you know, the owners are doing a grand job at trying to make a go of the thing, and we should want to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Luckhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of a question about the. It's in the Highways report, but the rooms are going to be limited by the extension of the patio. Can we get a picture up of it, please? Because I've got one on Google Maps. I don't know if it's, obviously you can't see it. So I don't know if you've got a picture of the pub as it exists currently. Yeah, that'll do. So looking at the picture, I mean, obviously I haven't been there, but it seems that the extension of the patio would only affect maybe the first 3, maybe 4 parking spaces. Has anything been looked up and maybe lose one of them and turn 2 of them round so they're facing out, so you don't need to move her out? I might be a bit beyond our remit for putting a condition in so specifically, but I was just wondering if that's been looked at.
In terms of the extent of the parking, it does actually extend fully to the highway, so it's not a case of losing 3 or 4 spaces. I would be able to give you an exact number, but it would be more than that. Just to highlight to members that the clearance space in which the Highway Authority usually allow for manoeuvrability in terms of reversing from a space is 6 metres. 1 second, let me just get the update sheet. And Councillor Dixon had asked about the width of the access, and it was noted that as existing it is already substandard, so the clearance is already 4.9. With the addition of the patio, we would be looking at a clearance of 3.1, in which the Highway Authority thinks is unacceptable, and the increase in manoeuvrability would essentially be pushing cars on to park on the road.
What if the pub just sort of say, want to get rid of part of the car park? Would we treat it the same if it's going to push cars out onto the road?
Again, I think it boils down to the reason for refusal in terms of parking, and that it hasn't been demonstrated that there is sufficient parking in order to allow for the provision of the works.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really interesting one. I'll start with the last answer. The measurements made are assuming that it's perpendicular parking, as is at the moment. If that was to be herringbone or even parallel parking, that gap would increase and be achievable. So, you know, I'm not here to talk about car parking and the likes, but that could be easily remedied, and they've maybe have considered that. My point was that I'm not sure what very special circumstances are, but we've got a community here with a community asset. I know it's a private business, but it is a community asset. And I'd say they're winning 70-0 at this rate. And I kind of think if we don't listen to a community and their needs and wants, and there's no naysayers on this, apart from the technicalities and the council planning, I think it's reversible. The ramp is an absolute must. I don't know why we wouldn't want to ramp. I did have concerns about the canopy, the built piece next to the next door neighbour, and the 45-degree rule. Now, the neighbour is happy with that, but the next neighbour, or when they sell and somebody else moves in, can they invoke the 45-degree rule at a later date? Or is it, once it's there, it's there?
If you look at the additional observations, that reason has been withdrawn. 45-degree rule is not being considered.
Okay, sorry, Chair. I thought that was because the neighbour wasn't complaining, but that's okay. Is a community asset and 70 locals backing it, could that be considered a very special circumstance?
Thank you, Chair. Members would need to be mindful of other rural enterprise or businesses that would seek to essentially propose the same thing. In terms of very special circumstances, by nature they are very special and therefore wouldn't be able to be replicated elsewhere within the district. Therefore, in allowing the extensions here, there's no stopping another rural business coming in with a similar argument, and therefore that wouldn't be very special.
Okay, sorry, Chair. Point taken. We have heard about community groups, disabled groups, accessing and that, and so actually it's quite a unique, every occasion is going to be unique, I guess, but point taken, thank you.
Councillor Margrave.
Thank you. For me, I think the only problem is this access and parking issue. That diagram up there isn't very clear because you can't zoom in and read the numbers. But it says on the right there, that's 8 metres, I think it is. And then the highways are complaining about something being 6 metres. So I'm not clear about what it is the highways don't like. So that's one question. We've heard already that the applicant would consider relaying out the car park and angling things. Is that a valid condition that we can apply?
Chairman, the committee obviously can't redesign the scheme at committee. If the applicant redesigns the scheme, there would need to be a reconsultation with highways. They obviously, even if they were here, they wouldn't be in a position to, to give advice. But yeah, it's not for the committee, I'm afraid, to redesign the scheme.
Oh, sorry, can I come back? I've got the second part of the question, the original part of the question about the numbers. I didn't understand where the 6 metres come from and all of that. But I wasn't suggesting redesigning the scheme. It was a condition on specifying the layout of the car park so it's compliant.
As legal have advised, we wouldn't be able to implement a condition without the approval from a Highways Authority, so we'd need to review an amended drawing prior to that being conditioned.
So the condition could be subject to Highways approval?
No, we would need the Highways Authority to, they would need to submit an amendment to the scheme, and we would need to consult on that, because Highways might object to it, so we can't grant something that might not be, the condition might not be able to be implemented.
Sorry, can I come back? So occasionally we'll have conditions where they've got to put adequate lighting or whatever fencing. We don't come back and we don't have to get that approved separately, so I'm a bit confused by that.
At this stage, with the information before us, we're not convinced that the issue can be overcome. So unless we have those details before us and the Highways Authority confirm that they're acceptable, we won't be able to put a condition on.
And the original part of the question was about understanding this 6 metres thing, because that figure up there says 8, so I didn't quite understand it.
I'm sorry, I can't see where it says 8 metres, but in terms of the 6 metre clearance, we're essentially taking the width of the access.
Which is 8 metres. That figure you can't read on the right under parking area says 805, which I guess is 808 metres, 805 centimetres, is it?
Well, I've measured the access for the purposes of answering Councillor Dixon, and I've measured it at 10.1. So taking away a 5 metre car park in length, there would need to be a 6 metre clearance to allow someone to reverse out without excessive manoeuvres.
Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to come back. Just looking at the reasons for refusal, there were 5, now reduced to 4 because the one about 45-degree angle has been removed. It seems to me, as we consider it, that the NPPF and policy DS18, which is about the extension of the building in terms of gross floor space, is in the end something that we can look at as a matter of judgment. Secondly, policy HE1 about the substantial harm with the significance of the conservation area is also, it seems to me, a matter of judgment. The problem arises with the 2 highways objections, which, as our legal advisor has stated, it's very difficult. I don't think we're in a position to go against what the Highways Authority has stated here. It puts us at risk as a planning committee, and however we might want to argue about it. So I think it's going to be very difficult not to follow the proposal to refuse on the basis of those 2 items, unless there's some way of getting around it. That's refusal reasons 3 and 5.
Is that at this stage a proposal? No.
So, yeah, I think I have to make that a proposal, sadly, because I feel particularly uncomfortable proposing to refuse an application which will bring significant developments, particularly in terms of accessibility and for the benefit of the community and the benefit of the business and all that brings. But I don't think we can go against what the Highways Authority has stated. But hopefully they'll be able to come back with a solution to that problem.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gifford. Seconding. Yeah?
Yes, a reluctant seconder. Yes.
All right, okay. Councillor Luck.
Thank you. I wasn't clear on the answer that was given to Councillor Margrove. So is it absolutely not possible that if this committee were minded to grant it, we could then delegate authority, say, grant, but you still have to satisfy Highways, then until Highways has been satisfied with the car park design, they can't build anything? Is there no way we can do that as a committee, so we don't have to come back and discuss gazebos again?
Chairman, no, we couldn't word a condition because the scheme needs to be redesigned. There needs to be another round of consultation. It is just not appropriate for a condition.
Councillor Margrove.
If the committee refuses it, do we give the grounds for refusal? So would we, if we were to refuse it only on the highways issue, does that then, when it comes back, leave the other issues open for discussion again? Or when we're refusing it, are we refusing it and agreeing with all of the reasons that the officers put forward? And therefore, if it was to come back, we couldn't therefore consider it again properly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, members would need to explain the reasons why they're not going ahead with the full suite of reasons for refusal. But if it was refused just for the reasons proposed, if it was resubmitted, the assessment would only have to focus on those two issues. Then the issues of Greenbelt and heritage wouldn't be up for reassessment. That would have already been dealt with.
Councillor
Sorry, so that's thank you again. So that's essentially the workaround that I was looking for. If it was refused, but only on highways, then they would only have to satisfy the car park, and then that would come back and that would go through essentially.
Well, you don't know whether it will go through or not because you don't know what you've seen until you've seen it.
Very true, Chair.
Predetermination is important. I'll take one more speaker and then I'm moving to a vote as I have a proposer and seconder. Stick.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful to be able to ask a question. I'm also grateful to the answers that Ms Flynn provided to the questions that I raised following my site visit. I'm looking at the letter from County Council Highways of the 8th of December, and it expresses the concerns about the loss of, or potential loss of, car parking spaces because of the extension of the patio area. And it says in the, what I think in the penultimate paragraph, if these parking spaces are difficult to use, vehicles could park on street, which would be disruptive to the public highway as the footways are narrow. Now, nowhere in this letter, to answer Mr. Bell's question, is the question of safety actually raised in that letter. It just talks about disruption, different issue. However, is it not the case that vehicles could park on the street anyway, whether this patio with the gazebos and the extension is put in place at the moment, because there are no restrictions for parking on the street as it currently exists. So in a way, I don't quite understand the Highways argument that says if these parking spaces are difficult to use, vehicles could park on the street. They can jolly well park on the street already.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is you've had advice from the professionals on the transport and highways. So you can agree with it or disagree with it. I was only going to take one more, Councillor Curse. I want to move to the vote. So we have proposal to refuse this on the grounds of the highways objection. Sorry? Okay, there is some concern about us approving the green belt aspects. In that if we approve this one, then there could be lots of pubs and buildings in the green belt who come with similar proposals. Would make it a weaker case for us.
Yes, if I may, Chair, I think we've dealt with this. We're always told to look at the application that is in front of us and not necessarily to look to precedents. And I remember one where we were looking at the extension of a steelworks outside where was it? I forget where it was. But anyway, where we had similar sorts of arguments and it was recommended to refusal, and we actually voted to approve because of the business benefits and the question of harm to the green belt was dealt with. So I think there are precedents for looking at each case as it comes before us.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, each case should be assessed on its merits, but this is, you need to be very specific about what it is about this specific case that leads you to that judgment in terms of, is it very special that, because there's no evidence that, there's no viability appraisal or anything like that has been submitted to say that this pub will struggle to survive, or there's viability issues if this development is not approved. And also, it's very, very similar cases. There's nothing unique about this case. I know there's the disability access issue, but that in itself, if there was for the ramp, I'm talking about, if we had a standalone application for the ramp, that would in all likelihood be approved. We haven't really got an issue with that. It's a scheme as a whole with the gazebos and the other aspects. But just having a reason for approving it based on, obviously the level of support and the fact that it's a good thing in terms of it will enhance the business, that is very difficult to say that that's very special circumstances and how you differentiate that from other cases.
So the advice would be that you need to articulate the very special circumstances for this particular case. So you've got a few minutes to think about that. Councillor Hazel.
Chairman, just to repeat what I said earlier, in my view, I don't think that decking and gazebos should be regarded as permanent structures. I think it's not what they are. And there's a danger that that itself surely sets precedent by regarding temporary structures as being permanent.
I'm going to advise an adjournment. So we adjourn to sort out what we're doing. So in that case, I need to clear the public. Private session. So vote that we go into private session. Those in favour? Okay, private session we are. Clear the gallery, please. Thank you. Welcome. Come back. Can we have a proposal, please?
My proposal is that we should refuse this application in line with officers' recommendations and with the addition of the comments in the update report, and to take those into account.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gifford. Any comments? All those in favour of recommendation, please show. That's 5, 6. Those against? 2. So it's clearly, it is lost. So planning permission is refused. Thank you. Sorry?
Chair, I abstained.
1 abstention. The motion was to accept the officer's report from there were 5 recommendations. 1 recommendation fell away because the 45-degree rule didn't count. So we're enforcing on 1, 2, 3 and 5. So the only one that's come out is the 45-degree rule. Okay. We now move on to agenda item 6, which is W/25/0816, land west of Firefly Road, Baggington.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. So this application is a full application for the erection of commercial buildings and associated works. This slide shows the site location plan. So that's the site's edged red with the hatching across it. It's currently comprises a piece of vacant land that's been prepared under a previous planning consent, and the land identified in blue is land within the control of the applicant. So this just shows the site in a bit more context. So we can see the site in the middle, edged in red, contains some areas of hard surfacing, and otherwise it's been cleared with some self-seeded vegetation. To the south, you've got the UK BIC, UK Battery Installation Centre facility. Over to the west of the site, you've got a community park known as Baggington Loops, which has been developed by the applicant or delivered by the applicant as part of a previous planning consent for Whitley South. Over to the eastern side of the site, you can see some new highways infrastructure that's gone in, and again, that's associated with the previous Whitley South planning consent, which is referred to in the report. And then in terms of the wider area, you've got the edge of Baggington Village towards the southwest. Further to the south, you've got the Coventry Airport site, and there's some other trading estates further to the east. And to the north of the site is Coventry City Council area. So in terms of the allocation, the land's allocation within the local plan, so the site is up here, and it forms part of the sub-regional employment allocation. So it's an employment allocation in the local plan of sub-regional significance. That includes quite a large area, includes the application site, it takes in the park to the west, and it extends down towards the south, where this part of the allocation is being developed by SEGRO, known as SEGRO Park, and also known as Gateway South. So just in terms of the background to that allocation, so the site was previously in the Greenbelt. It's been taken out of the Greenbelt and allocated for employment use. The part that comprises the park and this area just here, that is still within the Greenbelt. So I've touched on the previous Whitley South consent, which was a 2016 application and is referred to quite extensively within the committee report. So the application site, and this image that I'm showing now is the previously approved parameters plan for Whitley South, and that established a quantum of development for the mixed-use scheme that was approved under that previous permission, and building heights on the site. So the application site that members are looking at today is this area, which is Zone 1 on the previously approved parameters plan, and then that in itself is subdivided into various other sections labelled A to E, and corresponding to those sections are approved building heights. And then I'll just identify this area just here. So that's Baggington Loops. That has now been delivered as a buffer, as it was intended to the Lunt Roman Fort, which is over here, and to the village of Baggington. And that includes a landscape bund that's been provided within it. And as part of this previous consent, there's been various highway works that have been delivered as well. And just for members' benefit, this is a view showing the site. So we've taken from the new bridge across Firefly Road, forming Firefly Road. So in the distance, you've got the UK BIC facility. In the foreground, you've got the site, Baggington Loops Park over here, with the village beyond, and the Stonebridge Highway in the foreground. So in terms of the proposed development, it's for a series of commercial buildings, 9 in total, which will provide a total of 12 commercial units. It would principally be for storage and distribution purposes, which is classed as B8, but with flexibility to allow for a proportion of general industrial use, up to a maximum of 30%, falling within the B2 use class. The units will be provided along a series of development plateaus. So the lowest part of the site is up in the north near the Stonebridge Highway, and then the buildings would step up in a series of plateaus towards Rowley Road. In terms of the access for the site, it would utilise existing points of access which have been provided under the original Whitley South consent. So there's one here, and then one here coming in off one of the new roundabouts. And then there's a landscaping scheme proposed with the site to help to soften the visual impact of the development and integrate it into the wider landscape setting. So that particularly focuses on the landscaping to the perimeter of the site, to the roadside edges, and to Baggington Loops. And there have been some amendments to the landscaping scheme during the application process, particularly along this western boundary, to beef up the landscaping and significantly increase the number of mature trees along that western boundary, and also some changes to the landscaping across the Rowley Road frontage. So to give members a flavour of the design and appearance of the buildings, this is Unit 1 that's shown, but there's a consistent theme across all of the units. So they will be faced in graded cladding, which would be darker at the top and the bottom, and then grade through to a lighter colour within the middle, and that replicates the facing materials on the UK BIC building opposite the site. And this is just an illustrative view of that same unit, Unit 1, taken from Firefly Road. So you can see how it would look in more realistically and with the landscaping to the site boundaries. So I'm just about to run through a few slides that show some sections to show the relationship between the units and the surrounding land. So I focused on the more prominent units. So the first slide will be Unit 1, which is over here. I'll show Unit 5, Unit 7, and Unit 10, just to give an indication of the relationship to adjacent land. So the first one is Unit 1, which was in that bottom right-hand corner. Now I've drawn a line on here to accurately or to depict the height of the building. So it's shown in its full extent in relation to Rowley Road and also in relation to the proposed planting. So just to explain the planting, so the dark green is shown, that's indicative of how it would be planted when it's essentially at year 1, when it first goes in. The lighter green colour just here is at 10 years, anticipated growth at 10 years, and then the sort of the black and white dots there is the anticipated growth at year 20. So this is Unit 5, so this is at the opposite end of Rowley Road along the site frontage. So again, I've drawn on the height of the building, and it's the same situation in terms of the anticipated growth for the planting. So I think it's worth highlighting the units are set back from Rowley Road. There's soft landscaping provided in between, and obviously over the passage of time that would help to screen the units and soften their appearance. So just moving down along on that western boundary, so this is Unit 5 again, so at the front of the site, drawn on the height of the building relative to Baggington Loops. And this is Unit 7. Now this is the largest of the units by quite some way. So this is 15.2 metres in total. So that will be that gable end of Unit 7. And then this is Unit 10, again drawn on. That's one of the smaller units, just under 9.5 metres. And then these are some illustrative views. So I think the top one's quite useful in showing that staggered approach to using the site's topography with the development plateaus rising up towards Rowley Road over here. And then this is an illustrative view from the north, so effectively from beyond Stonebridge Highway. So to summarise the main points which are set out in detail within the committee report, the principle of development is in accordance with the local plan. The proposal is for employment development on land that's allocated for employment use. The scheme would bring forward development on this part of the employment allocation and enable the associated economic benefits to be realised, and officers have attached significant weight to that. The development is considered to be of an acceptable design. The appearance of the units is in keeping with the character of the area, and the height of the units is consistent with the building height parameters established under the previous Whitley South consent. Soft landscaping would be provided, and this would help to integrate the development into the wider area and also provide benefits in terms of open space for site users and ecological enhancements. The impact on the amenity of local residents can be controlled through planning conditions, and that includes in respect of noise and emissions to air. There are no highways objections, and apologies for the length of the update report that's come out today, but that sets out the highways position. So we have had recent consultation responses from both National Highways and County Highways. There's now no objection from both of those consultees subject to conditions and Section 106 agreement. So highway matters are considered to have been resolved. So yeah, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and a legal agreement as set out in the report and update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think it's useful putting the height of the buildings next to the green. That really made a difference. So we have a number of speakers. First of all, call on Councillor Walter Bush, Parish Council, and you have 3 minutes when you start.
Good evening. My name's Walter Bush, representing both Baggington and Bubnell Parish Councils. The officer's report was originally loaded on the 24th of December and has been brought to this planning meeting as of the 13th of January. This would be a premature application and has been very rushed with very little time for consultation within the villages. Both parish councils respectfully request that this planning committee consider either postponing this application or rejecting it. It's being premature in its fundamental form. The initial Wickley South JLR application was substantially smaller than the current proposal, which seeks approval for construction of warehousing buildings and associated infrastructure. Unlike the previous proposal, the number of jobs and skill sets will be significantly reduced as the jobs will be simply transferred into warehousing. Unlike the previous proposal, the outstanding issues concerning noise, traffic, building height and proximity to the building of the village have not been addressed. Noise reports pertaining to the construction activities often consist primarily of estimations and general assurances regarding the issues and resolution. They typically lack the specific recommendation for acceptable steps to reduce or eliminate the noise implication. This application is a totally antisocial application with long-term implications for village residents. Persistent noising concerns remain following the construction. Once the site is occupied, no definitive solutions have been proposed should ambient noise levels exceed acceptable limits during any 24-hour period. The similar evasive responses continue to be given. The applicant has repeatedly failed to address traffic concerns. Whilst the planning officer is proposing AMPR, which would only affect consenting employees and certainly would not address any HGV issues, which are still a concern with the highways. We need to resolve the issue of both traffic since the current AMPR coverage is limited to Rowley Road and Firefly Traffic Island. Building heights and proximity to Rowley Road has been repeatedly requested to be modified and has never been addressed by the applicant.
Can you draw your mats to a close, please?
Sorry?
Can you draw your mats to a close? Your 3 minutes is up.
Sorry?
Your 3 minutes is up.
Oh, yeah, I thought it would be. Thank you.
I call on County Councillor Ben Edwards. You have three minutes when you start.
The concerns residents have about the site's impact on the local country park are echoed by County Landscaping's objection, which is still live on the portal. They note the existing landscape fails to meet WDC policy, which requires new development to be positively contributing to the landscape character, and that it would not satisfy the original planning conditions from the original application. That objection is still live, so it would be disregarded if this is approved. There is no question this development will harm the setting of the Lunt Fort, a scheduled ancient monument and treasured local landmark. The officer report makes that clear. Traffic impacts on the village are also acknowledged in the application itself. A 24-hour distribution park, according to the applicant's own data, which they submitted, will see commuter peaks between 3 and 5 a.m. and HGV peaks between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. An HGV driving past your house at night will wake you up. I know, I used to live on Rowley Road. They drove past, it did. We also have existing reports of commuting in the early hours disturbing those living on Mill Hill. We already see HGVs using Baggington as a rat run for the Segro Park development currently operational, so the concern is this development will significantly impact the quality of life of Allington residents, which is valid. Hence, the Section 106 clause is requested by WCC Highways and a request that this application installs speed calming measures on Mill Hill and Rowley Road. Then there's the impact on existing businesses. UK BIC is a regional asset providing well-paid jobs and critical research and development. Its proximity was one of the justifications for a battery factory at Coventry Airport. As their comment notes, this scheme threatens their operations. Nowhere in the application does it even hint that development will support the wider objective of the investment zone to create an economic area based on battery and electronic technology. Any suggestion it does seems to come from inference from other officers. There are mitigations that will make this application entirely acceptable. The application could be modified to expand the landscaping as recommended by County, or reduce the height of the western section. There are no technical reasons why this cannot be done. The developer has simply chosen not to. Of the benefits, it's not like we need warehouse space. To the west of that, to the west in the existing industrial estate, there is a derelict building and a large section of hard standing that is currently overgrown, that is simply unused. This development will deliver B8, the least efficient use of land for promoting jobs. So from this, we will get 500 low-paid warehouse jobs. That's it. For all the flawed landscaping, traffic implications, negative impact to scheduled ancient monuments, and risk to critical economic infrastructure. 500 low-paid, low-skilled jobs. Are those few hundred low-paid, low-skilled jobs worth compromising our own standards and our own policies? Thank you.
Thank you. I call up Mrs. Reba Horsfall. Horsfall, rather. Sorry, yes.
Yes, Reba Horsfall, I'm a Baggington resident. With no special circumstances, green fields were taken out of Greenbelt, granted permission and enabled for a discrete technology park that was never built. As villagers always predicted, this plot is now under discussion for speculative warehouses. The buildings bear no resemblance to and are much larger than the JLR plan. Some parameters may adhere, but the floor space and overall building volumes have increased dramatically, yet the thousands of jobs can now be counted in just hundreds. Exaggerated distances from the village and submitted drawings hide the harmful impact. Concept drawings omit the true height of buildings, and requested visual representations of views from the village have not been produced. From years of disruption, villagers know that construction management plans do not stop incessant beeping noises and layers of dust and dirt invading our lives. Without proper acoustic barriers, we know from UK BIC that planning conditions and bunds do not prevent harmful continuous whining and humming noises pervading homes and disturbing sleep. I have proof of that in a monitoring report from my property, a bund and 500 metres away from a noise source. Seagrove Park is currently experiencing similar noise complaints. Sleep is being disturbed by speeding cars from early morning Seagrove Park shift change, and their DHL lorries have been seen coming through the village. These plans will see additional 24/7 HGV movements using unsuitable access points in Rowley Road, just metres away from homes. These plans will also add to the light pollution from existing warehouses just north of the A45. The Whitley South Community Park and questionable landscape plans are supposed to provide visual screening. In reality, many of the standard trees in that park have died, the remainder are struggling, and the majority of whips have made insignificant growth in 4 years. This land underwent so many earth movements, it's little wonder there is no fertility left. It will be many years before planting has any mitigating effects. The best time to plant trees is 20 years ago. The proposed buildings do not align with existing developments, and supporters are in denial regarding the close proximity and detrimental impact of another large logistic park and associated HGV traffic on Baggington Village and its residents. For fairness and probity in planning, giving due weight to local knowledge and concerns is imperative in ensuring that development of this site is mutually acceptable and does not result in further deterioration of the local environment. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very well timed, dead on 3 minutes. Councillor Josh Payne, White District Council, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say, to start off with, that while I am objecting to this, that objection is with some reluctance, and I want to keep my remarks for planning committee members measured, if I may, because I do recognise that there are employment benefits for the site, and if one were to work there, it wouldn't really matter to that individual whether the job was low-skilled or high-skilled. That would be somebody's employment, and it would be their salary, and it would impact on their welfare having it. I understand the objections that have been raised, but I think the picture in Baggington is usually quite complicated, because I also know of constituents who support development around the area and support the money that it's going to bring in, and support the jobs benefit, particularly younger families. So just wanted to say that in advance. And I've read the officer's report after putting down my comments, and I think to be fair to officers, they have actually met some of, even though maybe not all, the objections that have been raised. But nevertheless, with reluctance, I just wanted to mention three things: the impact on residential amenity, the impact on heritage, which Councillor Edwards has referred to, especially in relation to Lunt Roman Fort, and the pace of change more generally with the development around the village, although I appreciate that the pace of change is legally probably not going to be a grounds for refusal. Given the range of objections, there is a significant impact of this on residential amenity, either directly or indirectly, particularly for residents on Rowley Road and residents at the Lunt Cottages, as Councillor Edwards has mentioned. I appreciate officers are saying some of those objections can be met with planning conditions, which may be added later. So I guess it's a matter of fine judgment for committee whether to refuse or to allow officers to do it through those conditions. The impact on heritage, I think in the past, one of the strengths of the village and one of the really good things it offers is the diversity around it in terms of the different businesses operating there, the variety of museums, the variety of charities. So I have been torn on this application because I support the employment benefits, but we don't want so much development so quickly around the village that it suffocates the area and really does spoil the environment in and around the Lunt Roman Fort. I think that's a fair point. As councillors in the area, we do have the context of an investment zone, which is a national and regional project. So I worry all the time that, yes, there are residents' objections, but the investment zone is a regional and national project, and one has got to be realistic and pragmatic in terms of any attempt to oppose it vehemently. We have to be realistic as ward councillors how we approach this, and a lot of what we're going to be doing in the future in Baggington, I think, is mitigation with planning applications that have been approved. That's the slog that we're going to have as councillors, not opposing applications per se, but doing the mitigation and getting the relationships going with the developers and with the planning applicants. So I'm not in favour of suffocating the village with too much development too soon, because we, as I say, we need to do the mitigation properly, and if the pace of change is too fast, it makes the mitigation difficult to achieve. I note the officers have said they're going to, if it is approved, add in further planning conditions and do the S106 agreement later. I took advice on that, and I've been told that that's standard planning procedure and standard practice, so that's fine, I think, but I'd just like some reassurance that if that's going to be done later in terms of any funding that the applicant agrees to provide for the area, there's going to be a sensible opportunity for ward and parish councils to feed into those discussions, even though they're delegated, and there will be channels for them to give their views on whether S106 funding should go later. So I am objecting, but my objection is reluctant, and I hope that makes sense to committee members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. I have a question that might be very technical, but I don't know what the answer is. It's comparing conditions 16 and 17. I noted that the application is deemed to comply with all of the requirements of our net zero carbon DPD, which is very good to see, with the exception of only partial compliance with NZC3. And I was wondering if you could explain a bit about what the partial compliance means. And then looking related to that, condition 16, which refers to ensuring that there is verification of as-built performance, which again is excellent to see, but only for three of the constructed units. And I'm asking why that is not a requirement for all the constructed units, because I could quite see, sadly, a builder thinking, okay, we'll do these 3 to the proper specifications and we'll just wing it on the others. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happening. And thirdly, how that compares to the BREEAM very good assessment. And it's sort of in a related area, but I'm just wondering how our NZC requirements relate to the BREEAM requirements. So I hope that's not too technical, or we can have some answers.
Yeah, happy to try and answer those, Councillor. So, yeah, the point about NZC3, so, and it only being a partial compliant, so that's just around a whole life carbon assessment requirement, and it's not unusual for full details to be known at planning application stage, because that goes into really some finite detail in terms of, for example, where materials are being sourced from. So it's not unusual to necessarily not have that detail up front. But to deal with that, condition 5 has been recommended, and that seeks to pick up that area where there is still a bit more information that's required. So that will be addressed through that condition.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
You mentioned around the condition 16 and the verification report, and this being into just 3 units. So that's just looking for a sample size. That's our standard approach, whether that be residential or commercial. It would be quite onerous on any developer to have to submit that detail for every single unit or house before it was occupied. So the approach the local planning authority's taken is that it's reasonable just to have a sample size across whatever the development is.
Could I ask then, how do we know that all the rest of them are being built to the same standard? We just have to trust them.
It's a compliance condition, so they have to comply with it. But in terms of having that verification, it would just be on a number of the units. Okay. And then in terms of BREEAM, so there's a requirement for the development to be achieve BREEAM very good standard, and that's the policy requirement. The applicant is set out that they're committed to achieving BREEAM excellent standard in this development, so that is obviously a level up. But in terms of the what we can secure through this application, we can only secure very good, and anything above that is down to the developer, but they have said that that's what they're aiming for, and that's secured through condition 17.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Hazelwood.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of clarifications, I think. So, as I understand it, the outline planning application from 2017 is still valid, even with the various variations since then, and that this proposal is largely in line with that. But it is substantially bigger. So it's, if I've got the numbers right, it's about 30% bigger than in the original outline planning application. And if I'm right, heard correctly from the floor, that for fewer jobs. So could you explain why the increased floor area is justified? There's a statement in the report that says that it's justified, and just say a little bit more about the justification for that. That's my first question. And the second one is about highways. So I've seen that highways have not raised any objections, and there's a clarification in the tabled. The concerns raised were about Tollbar Island being too busy, and I think this says that there are actually less traffic than in the 2017 application. So I just wanted to understand that that was a correct interpretation of the advice that came around earlier today.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So yeah, just to go back to the previous Whitley South permission then. So that predates the land's allocation in the local plan as an employment site. There was a set of parameters established under that Whitley South permission. Now that Whitley South permission was, it was for a mixed use scheme, it was employment led. It was Jaguar Land Rover were heavily behind it, and it involved a car showroom, and so that was much of the driver for that particular development. So it was quite bespoke in that sense. So that was the original Whitley South consent. Part of the Whitley South consent has been developed out with the UK BIC facility down here. But what's come forward now is a standalone application for full planning permission. So the planning history is relevant context, but this application isn't bound necessarily by, or it's not bound by those parameters that were set, but the applicant has sought to stay within the approved height parameters, and that's been achieved. In terms of the floor space, yes, there is an increase in the amount of floor space under this current proposal in comparison to the parameters under the outline, and yeah, it's about 9,000 sort of square metre increase. And officers have considered that, as you've seen in the report. But ultimately, this is now an employment allocation. There's an issue around making an effective use of land. The developers put this scheme forward with a range of unit sizes to capture a variety of potential end users. So overall, officers are content with the quantum of development that's been put forward, and consider that it makes an effective use of this employment allocation. Apologies, yeah, you mentioned, there was your second point about highways. So yes, you're correct. It would generate, it is anticipated to generate less traffic movements, less trip generation in comparison to the previous Whitley South consent.
Can I just come back on the first bit, the justification? I mean, I was just looking for a bit more clarification on how you make the assessment that it's about the justification for the extra area, because just looking at it very simply, in layman's terms, it seems like it's a lower value proposal, and it takes more space to deliver fewer jobs. That's still a lot better than what's there at the moment, which is nothing. So I'm not arguing that it shouldn't proceed, but I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about the rationale for the justification that this is in line with the original outline planning in terms of value.
I think to take it back to the principle of development, so since the Whitley South permission, things have moved on and the land's been allocated for employment use. So that is, well, in terms of the policy one, it's B1, B2 and B8. There's now no B1 in terms of the use classes order, but it includes light industrial and offices. So it's for, as employment, permitted employment uses on this site, it's offices, it's light industrial, it's general industrial, and it's storage and warehousing. So that's what's come forward through this application. So it's entirely consistent with the land allocation. There's no reason why the floor area has to be in line with the parameters. That was a specific mixed use scheme, as I explained, with Jaguar Land Rover behind it. So they're different schemes, essentially.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr Walker, for the report and also the substantial comments in the update report. I've just got one concern, because I know it's proposed a new condition 20, I think it's condition 26 to prevent HGVs turning right out of units 4 and 5, which I assume are the two bottom left ones there. What's to stop HGVs entering the site up the Rowley Road, coming in from the west by turning left, i.e. going through the village to do that? Is there anything that restricts that happening?
The access restriction strategy that's been recommended by the Highways Authority, that is intended to address that. So that would involve, or it's expected that it would involve automatic number plate recognition, for example. So that is a scheme. The original Whitley South consent included a similar provision, and this would sort of replicate that, but it's likely to be more robust than the previous Whitley South permission.
So would I be correct in thinking that at the moment HGVs can't go through the village and go up that way onto up Rowley Road to access the site? What happens if there's a poor HGV driver who comes down Rowley Road from the roundabout and misses the turn? Where's he going to go, or she?
So I'll just take it back to the access to start with. So there's 2 points of access on Rowley Road. The design of that junction is such that it physically restricts HGVs to turn right. That isn't the case with this western access, and so Highways have asked for that condition to redesign that junction to have a sort of similar arrangement where it would make it physically more difficult for HGVs to turn right. In terms of where the HGVs are coming from, they could come from any direction, but the Rowley Road access restriction strategy would allow for the management and control of that. So when this development is operational, there would be measures in place to control and restrict vehicles going through Baginton Village, as far as reasonably practicable.
Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. I was going on exactly the same theme. Looking on Google Maps and looking how lorries can, as far as I can see, just drive straight through the village to this day. And I assume that will still be the case, even though you say there may be ANPR. But we have experience, as you may well recall, construction lorries totally ignoring things, conditions being put in Barford. If you remember in Brembridge too, where all hours of the day, I don't see why any development here wouldn't be any different. Are we able to condition here that we have some sort of, not ANPR, but some sort of physical barrier to limit the width of vehicles going on into Baginton along Rowley Road? And before you answer the question, Councillor Dixon, I think the answer to your question about what they would do if they missed the turning is exactly what they do in my village, which is a one-street village. They reverse back. They have no choice. So anything we can do to restrict access to Baginton as a condition, please.
I think it's important to remember that this is an allocated employment site. So within the local plan, it's expected that commercial units are going to come forward on this site, and it's a site of sub-regional significance. So there will be traffic, HGV traffic, associated with this site as a natural consequence of the site's allocation. The legal agreement is considered to be as robust a a mitigation measure as we can reasonably impose on the planning permission. So that's the mechanism. That's been agreed by, in consultation with the Highway Authority. The Highway Authority hasn't recommended or suggested any other off-site highway works specifically to try and limit HGV movement towards Baginton. I think that would be difficult from a practical point of view. I'm not a highways engineer.
I would suggest width barriers, which were used widely in many, many places, where a 7-foot width barrier or something similar to that. My question is, can we, as a committee, condition something like that to be included on Rowley Road? I totally understand your point about the employment, but we have to the north the A45 and the A46 just to the east and west, 2 major roads. So there'll be plenty of viable routes for HGVs not to have to use the roads through Baginton. I think it was Mrs. Horsfall who said something about HGVs going through it silly hours of the day. I think we need some physical barrier, and are we as a committee able to recommend that, even though the highways have not suggested it necessarily?
Just before responding to that point, Councillor, there have been a lot of highway works that have been delivered as part of the original Whitley South consent and the Gateway South consent, and you can see they are substantial highway works that are intended to mitigate the highway impacts on the local area and provide suitable access to and from the sub-regional employment site. So those are the measures that have been previously requested, proposed and provided to mitigate the traffic impacts, and they have been considered acceptable.
So there should be no excuse for any vehicles going through Baginton, and that therefore putting width restrictions wouldn't cause any problems.
I think with the highway measures that have been, the highway works that have been provided, plus the access restriction strategy, that is a package of measures that would reasonably prevent access through Baginton Village.
Can we not put a condition on that access to Baginton Village is actually resolved? Because we don't know what they're proposing. I mean, I can understand you narrow it down, they can't get through. So that is a definite no-no. Why they'd want to go through Baginton, I'm not quite sure.
Nor am I quite sure why they want to go, but I know the way that people behave. Whether you're a car driver or an HGV driver, we're all human and instinctively try to find the shortest route. I think it's much better for us as a planning committee to look at doing something, as you proposed, Councillor Bode, than for Councillor Edwards to have to come back in to the county council or whatever body it will be in 18 months' time, saying I need to spend a lot of money to restrict the access to Baginton because the measures just aren't working. That's my concern.
Chairman, it's outside the red line, so it's not something we can condition. We could, and it would require the local highway authority to amend the traffic regulation order for the stretch of road so that what sets the speed limit, the weight limit and so on, that would need amending, and then they put in the physical measures to enforce that. We could write to the local highway authority and ask them to consider making those changes, but because it's outside the red line, it's not something we can condition. And obviously the highway authority in their response haven't said we will seek a contribution to pay for the amendment to the traffic regulation order and then pay for the physical measures to enforce the weight limit or the speed limit and so on.
Can we add a note?
I think that's where we're heading, and I know Councillor Edwards is listening. I'm sure he'll take it away and look at that from his perspective.
Councillor Yellow-Praganda.
Thank you, Chair. What is the impact impact on Greenbelt? How is this justified? One. The other thing is how much percentage of biodiversity is aimed at. The second question is regarding what measures are in place to reduce noise. Thanks.
So in terms of the first question on the Greenbelt, this site was removed from the Greenbelt, so it's no longer in the Greenbelt, so that doesn't fall to be considered for this application. In terms of biodiversity, so yeah, it's required to deliver, in terms of biodiversity, there's already been substantial biodiversity enhancements and mitigation provided under the Whitley South consent. So that's been taken into account as part of the assessment of this application, along with the value of the current site, which is essentially nil, because it's land that's previously been cleared with a view to it being developed. So taking those together, there's not any specific biodiversity net gain that's required, but the landscaping scheme that is proposed includes extensive tree planting, native hedgerow planting, SUDS drainage features, so that would automatically deliver a biodiversity net gain of at least 10%. So in terms of the assessment process, we're saying that the mandatory 10% doesn't apply to this site, but in any event, it would be delivered through the landscaping scheme.
About the noise reduction, please.
Noise, yes, noise.
Yeah, measures.
So yeah, we've got a very robust condition recommended for noise, and that's being cognizant of the local concerns that have been raised, and that's been worded in conjunction with the Environmental Health Officer. So yeah, that's condition 10, and that requires a noise assessment for that individual unit, for each individual unit to be submitted before it's occupied, and the noise assessment also has to take in the cumulative impact of all the other units on the site. So it is very robust.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just pondering over the comment that was made that we can only talk about stuff that is within that red boundary. Yet policy TR1 talks about creating attractive access routes for cyclists, emergency services, public transport, safe routes. Surely then you can talk about stuff outside that red box, which would include narrow access roads, restricting access, wouldn't it?
Chairman, you can't condition something outside the red line. The 106 package for the scheme includes contributions towards like cycle paths, and the update says that there will be a contribution towards cycling and walking works fund. So the developer will pay a financial contribution, and then the county council will deliver those attractive cycleways. But no, you can't condition something outside of the red line.
I really can't understand that. How you can have a statement like that and then say you can't talk about stuff outside the red line. That doesn't make sense to me.
But that's the way it is, apparently. Do I have a proposer? Are we here all night? Councillor Dixon.
Yes, Chair. Bearing in mind the comments made by myself and Councillor Phillips, expressing concerns about access from the west, I think it is, of that. Actually, I am prepared to propose we grant planning permission subject to a note that the Highways Authority find some way of limiting access to the village.
Yep, do I have a seconder? Councillor Phillips?
Can I add to that note some physical way?
A brick wall, yes. That it? All those in favour of the recommendation as set out, plus the note? Sorry? There was a change in the... We include that. Okay? That's... Set 8, with one abstention, I think. Thank you. So that is clearly carried with the change on the addendum and also the note. Thank you. It's now 8:10, so I propose that we have an adjournment for 15 minutes to encourage you to get back. So if we adjourn now, thank you. Thank you for returning to the meeting for agenda item 5, which is W/24/1438, Aldi at the Shires Retail Park, Touchwood Drive, Warwick.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for a variation...
Hang on.
Sorry?
We've got 2 speakers.
Oh, we haven't done the presentation yet.
Of course I haven't. You're right.
Sorry. Thank you. So, this application is for a variation to amend the approved plans associated with planning application W210179, which granted planning permission for the demolition of the previous building on the site occupied by Mothercare and the erection of a new food retail store with associated car parking, servicing and landscaping. The works are now complete and the building is occupied by Aldi. The original planning permission W210179 has been subject to 2 earlier variation of condition applications. W220450 granted planning permission to amend the BREEAM requirements, and application W22073 granted the inclusion of an Armco barrier, a substation and amended the cycle storage location. This current application includes the changes from the earlier 22 variation of condition applications to consolidate all of these into one application for clarity. However, these elements have already been granted planning permission. As part of this current application, the proposal seeks to amend the Queensway access to remove the barrier which restricts access to deliveries only. The proposal seeks to amend the highways arrangement through the introduction of a new footway and a new pedestrian painted footpath through the car park. The application has been triggered to be considered at Planning Committee due to the number of objections received. This slide shows the application site outlined in red. The site lies to the southwest of Royal Leamington Spa within the built-up area boundary and comprises of the existing food retail building, car park and associated access points. You can see just here. The site has existing customer access from Touchwood Park Drive, located just here off of the Forearm roundabout, and access from Queensway, just here, this access point here for deliveries. The Leamington Retail Park lies to the southwest in this location here, access from the same shared roundabout, and the A452, which connects through from Leamington Spa to the motorway routes, is located just to the west. The closest neighbouring properties lie to the east and to the north. Opposite, we have McDonald's, and neighbouring properties just here to the east. The adjacent site, which is the former Aldi site, has been granted planning permission for a new B8 storage building as part of planning permission W241753 for this building here. Works have now commenced and the former Aldi building has now been demolished. This slide shows an aerial image of the application site with the approximate location of the site outlined in red. The A452 is visible to the west of the site with the roundabouts. You can see just here and further to the north. These roundabouts have recently been upgraded to increase lane capacity as part of the Warwickshire County Council Works WCC-3. These works were completed in September 2025 and include works along the Queensway, including at the access of the site over here. Ford's Fields and McDonald's are visible just here, so McDonald's and Ford's Fields to the north of the site, and to the southwest, the Leamington Shopping Park. This slide shows the approved site plan for the original planning permission, W210179. The original cycle storage is circled in orange, you can see just here. And the access points are visible, including the delivery access here onto Queensway. This slide shows the approved site plan for W220703, which approved the repositioning of the cycle storage, as shown in orange here, the inclusion of a new Armco barrier and location just here along the Touchwood Park Drive, and the introduction of a new substation, which is circled in orange just down here. This slide shows proposed elevations for information which remain unchanged as part of the original application. This slide shows the proposed Armco barrier which was granted as part of W220703 and photographs of the barrier, the substation and the cycle storage in situ. So the substation's just here, got the cycle storage just here and the barrier just here. This slide shows a proposed site plan which forms part of the application which is before members this evening. The changes from the earlier applications are included on this plan and have not changed compared to W220703. So in terms of the changes, we've got the substation here, the cycle storage here, and the Armco barrier included on this site plan. The changes also include a new footway to the public highway up at the access point at Queensway. The barrier is proposed to be removed, New gates are proposed and repositioned, and a new pedestrian walkway which goes through the site, and it will be painted on the car park connecting to the store. This slide shows a highways works plan just to the right and a recent photograph to the left of the slide. The changes are identified, which are identified in red, fall within the extent of the public highway. So these works just here to the top of the plan. And these are shown in the photograph to the left and have been completed as part of the Warwickshire County Council Works WCC-3. The footway will be extended as part of this application in this location here, and then the footpath will be painted through the car park area down to the store. On these plans, a 2-metre wide footway is proposed, but Highways have recommended a condition, number 19, that this be extended to 3 metres in width. And the footway improvements, in terms of the footpath through the site, will measure approximately 1.5 metres in width going through the car park area. This slide shows a number of photographs taken looking at the site and the highway along Queensway. So you can see Queensway access just here. This is looking into the application site. You see the car parking area. Bottom left is looking across the access with it just to the right-hand side of this photograph. And the final photograph is taken looking towards the access with it just to the right-hand side. This slide shows a photograph taken looking towards Queensway from the barrier. So you can see looking out to Queensway here from the barrier within the application site. And the right image was taken looking into the site, and the barrier is just there for reference into the car park area. This slide shows photographs within the site with the left looking towards the building. We can see just here, adjacent to the barrier and the car parking area, and this will be the location of the new footpath going in this location across to the store. The right image was taken looking back towards Queensway. You can see the barrier just here and the car parking, which you can see just the left image on the right of this image. This slide shows a photograph taken from the Tatchbrook Park Drive looking into the car park. And you can see the barrier there for reference purposes, former Aldi site in the distance, and you've got the existing access for customers coming in with the store just to the right-hand side. And then a couple of other photographs from within the application site. So looking from that access back towards the retail building. The next photograph's looking across the frontage of the application site building, which is just here to the left. And the final was taken from the access looking towards the building. And you've got the cycle storage just here, and the main road just here with the roundabout to the right of the image. This application seeks to vary the approved plans condition of the original planning permission W210179 to make changes to the access arrangements to enable access for both customers and delivery vehicles from Queensway. Officers are satisfied the development will fall within the operative part of the planning permission and the scope of the use originally granted, and subject to conditions and notes will not give rise to highway safety harm, and subject to updated conditions to reflect the proposed information that's been approved, officers don't consider it would give rise to any other material planning harm having regard to the MPPF and the development plan. It is therefore recommended that planning permission be granted subject to conditions and the updated condition in the update sheet. There are a number of updates to this application which have been circulated on the update sheet. There is also a verbal update. One further objection has been received from Councillor Davison, which raises concerns that the Queensway junction is proposed to be used for customers when it was promised to be used for deliveries only, and concerns in terms of the Queensway access was not proposed, as that would mitigate any impact on neighbouring properties by using the access from the roundabout instead. Reference is made to what was granted initially and reference to other sites where there have been changes in condition, including Chesterton Gardens and the Warwick McDonald's. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now get on to our speakers. And first of all is Councillor Oliver Jacks from Warwick Town Council. You have 3 minutes.
We acknowledge that our objection originates from December 2024, which was when we reviewed this application, and that was at the height of the roadworks on the Queensway roundabout. However, we still believe that to allow customer access via Queensway risks creating a Rat1 situation between Queensway itself and Tatbrook Park Drive. This in turn, we believe, will lead to added pressure on roads which are already taking extra traffic. We therefore believe there is an associated risk to pedestrians trying to use the supermarket. On page 10 of the Auditor's report, it says that the Highways Authority are of the view that any issues caused by rat running would be an impact on the private land of the site and not the public highway. However, this seems to pass the onus of risk management onto the landowner. I suggest there is scope for some form of traffic calming measure, possibly secured by condition, on the highway's land which forms the junction with Queensway, such as a simple speed bump, for example. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll call on Councillor Jonathan Chilvers, White District Council, and you have 5 minutes when you start.
Thank you. If you just want to, can you move on to the next slide straight away, please? Thank you. So I'm Jonathan Chilvers, and this application borders my ward. I have two specific things that I'm going to ask for variation in conditions at the end. The first is around that I think this access is very dangerous for pedestrians. You see Queensway at the top. The County Council have done that work to narrow the display and put the pavement in. But then literally what they're expecting to do, pedestrians to do, is to turn the corner and literally step off the pavement at the red line into the road with cars coming from behind people, swinging in, round, and literally we're expecting them to step into the road. So if you move on to the next slide, please, you can see this is looking at it. So on the left is where you have to step into the road. You're expected to walk along this new footway, which is literally some tram lines painted onto the road, round the back of that lorry, round the back of cars who might well be reversing out. You might be going through them with your pushchair. You don't know a car's going to be reversing out round there, and then you have to cross into Aldi going right on the right-hand side. And so, to me, that's really, really dangerous. And, you know, the county have done their bit in terms of doing the footpath outside the red line, and Aldi are just saying, no, we want people to step into the traffic. So, to me, that's unacceptable. And we need a footway or protected access sort of down behind those cars and then crossing in. So, next slide, please. And actually, the extract from the committee report, County Highways said they did want a new footway to be protected, i.e. a proper footpath, but they didn't object because it was within the red line, not on the highway. So if you change this, you're not going against Highways. Highways didn't object, but only because it was inside the red line. It's not because they thought that it was okay just to paint a path on the middle of the road. Officers chose not to accept that, and they do explain why. So that's the first one, is that dangerous highway. If we can go on to the next slide, please. The second one is the location of the cycle storage. So in the southeast corner, there is a very good pedestrian and cycle access, but then they've put the cycle storage just like completely on the other side of the site. And to get there, coming in from there, you have to go past the unloading bay, which is really quite difficult with big vehicles, all the way past the busy front of the store into the cycle storage corner from that. So from that bottom right to that kind of middle left. And so I would like to see that, that cycle storage be near that southeast entrance. So basically we've got these two things, and, you know, on the dangerous pedestrian and the bad cycle storage, and, you know, Aldi say spend a little, live a lot, but the message they seem to be sending here to pedestrians and cyclists is, well, we'll spend a little, you live if you're lucky. So I'm not happy. So I've got two suggestions for you. So if you could move to the next slide, please. So this is the conditions listed at the end. Condition 1 is about the map. And so my suggestion to you as committee is to ask you to put in that condition 1 to amend the location of the cycle storage area within that southeast section of the car park, and set out a revised map as in a change to condition 19. So if you could go one more slide, please. So condition 19 is basically saying that the barrier shouldn't be removed until a protected pedestrian access, i.e. a footpath, down that eastern side of the boundary behind the cars, so people aren't having to risk their lives stepping into the road and been reversed into by people coming out just with no protection at all. So I'm not opposed to the application if these conditions can be amended to make sure that we actually have a safe pedestrian access and improved cycle storage in the right place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Councillor Bird, and thank you, Councillor Chilvers. I completely agree with you on the footpath. For my years in industry, working with heavy manufacturing, if I'd proposed that, the health and safety executive would have been down on me like a ton of bricks. I am astonished that Aldi have not had their own people look at this and make that change. And I really like the officer's comments on whether we're able to insist on that change, because to me it's simple, common sense.
Thank you. So in terms of the location of the pedestrian walkway through the site, we did go back and query that with the applicant's agent to understand the justification, and their response was this is the desire line that most people would use to go from this access to the store because it's the most direct route. So even if there's an alternative route elsewhere, it's likely people will go the most direct route. And it's obviously from a highway safety perspective, there's capacity on the highway network at Queensway and the roundabout to accept the vehicles coming through the site. So highways haven't objected subject to conditions. From an officer perspective, we've looked at the footpath, and due to existing arrangements of the car park, it's limited to move that around the site. So we've not raised an objection that would merit a refusal of the application on that basis. I've got a couple of photographs in terms of the location that's been proposed along the eastern boundary. There's about 1 metre, and it's not level area. So if I just go through just to show a couple of photographs from, this is the location here along the eastern boundary. So when we've been looking at it from an application perspective, it's considered that the desired line, as the agent has justified, we wouldn't raise an objection to it on that basis.
I'm astonished that Aldi are willing to risk their reputation because of the line of sight issue. If it's done properly, people will walk on the proposed footpath generally, and that Aldi aren't providing this. I'm not saying I object to the application, I just think this needs to be changed in the conditions.
Yes, it does seem a bit surprising, but of course, if you keep the footpath where they're proposing, that is in effect de facto road space, so you've got more room to turn the cars around. So I suspect that is what they're doing.
One possible solution, which I've also seen employed in the industry, is that no car can park in, all cars have to park in reverse, so they drive out. But that won't happen in a private supermarket. They need to do something far more pedestrian protective than this current proposal.
Let's just move the car park over the cars. Councillor Hazelwood.
Yeah, so Councillor Chilvers has made an alternative suggestion about, as a condition about where the pathway should be. Are there any planning reasons why that wouldn't work? Would make the overall proposal unworkable? Do we have to deal with the proposal in front of us, or can we change it on that point in nature?
Yes, Chairman, I think that's just too significant. It's, in effect, redesigning the scheme. So again, we would need to go back out to consultation and all the rest of it.
So that would be a refusal, just say.
So just for clarification, so we couldn't put that as a condition. We would approve it subject to moving the cycle store and the change to the pathway.
No. Councillor Yellowbrook-Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. I've recently visited the site, and I also remember from when there was no barrier and cars were going through this access space. And the pedestrians were finding it very hard to go to Aldi at that point in time. And if you have young children or pram, or you're in a mobility scooter, it would be even harder to go through that space where the cars are reversing. And I can't really see how it's going to be safe unless the car spaces are moved a little bit away and a space is made for pedestrians to walk. I can't see how it's going to be safe, really.
Councillor Margrave.
Thank you. I'm not entirely convinced by the suggestion of moving the bike parking. I didn't even know you could get to the supermarket round the back there. And I think whenever you go to the Shires or Leamington Retail Park, whatever it's called these days, you take your life into your hand by having to walk from the car park to Sainsbury's or wherever. And it's a similar idea to that that they're proposing here. But how many metres then? Because we talked about in that other application about the required turning. If they were to move the swap over the footway to where the cars are, so the footpath is against the fence, what's the distance then from those parking spaces to the other ones? It's quite, I'm pointing my mouse as if you can see. It's hard to describe, but does it then reduce the parking turning area to less than, was it 6 metres we talked about previously?
I don't have the dimensions to hand, but I think if the footway was to be relocated to the eastern part, it might impact on the amount of parking available on the site. So in terms of, we would have to look at it as a whole scheme reconfigured, because it might have an impact if you're displacing that parking out. We might lose parking spaces, and as part of the original application, parking was key, and it was just about acceptable based on the level of parking provided.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on Councillor Margaret's point, as this is private land, do we actually, does Highways have any say over the amount of space required for parking? So would we even be concerned about that? So we could just shuffle it over. Is that, have I read that wrong?
We would want to ensure that there is sufficient parking on site, and as part of the earlier schemes, 170 spaces for the retail park. It is shared with Aldi and the other unit, which is located just here, which is Curry's. So it is a shared parking area between the two units. So in terms of loss of parking, we would be assessing that as officers and have to give weight to that when considering any proposal if it was going to result in reduction.
On one other point, if you're ever walking with small children, you would not want to walk along any route where the cars could reverse out. I'd risk it by myself, but yeah, small children, no, not happening.
Councillor Kennedy.
If we were therefore to refuse it on the grounds that we do not consider that route safe, can we make that assessment without a Highways comment? I know, because Highways haven't commented on it because it's on private land, but we're looking at it as a committee and concerned about the safety of that route. Can we legitimately say, sorry, you've got to move the route of the pedestrian? Yeah.
So we can consider it. I mean, in terms of the Highways comments, they've not objected. It is private land. They're happy there's sufficient capacity. They have made suggestions. We've gone back to the agent. They've justified the location of the footway through the site. They've also referenced that their existing pedestrians will be walking around the car park, and so they expect vehicles to be moving slower in any instance anyway. And during the site visits that I've carried out, you have got people who aren't on the designated footways going across to vehicles and things like that. So vehicles, the agent has suggested, would be moving slower in those circumstances anyway.
Councillor Hazelwood.
So in terms of the safety concerns, I completely agree with what's being said. I've got experience in my own local Tesco store of having a similar arrangement, and it's a nightmare, both from a driving and from a pedestrian point of view. But having said that, you know, that is an example where this has been agreed elsewhere, or something similar to this, and there are probably examples of this in multi-storey car parks, and Birmingham Airport has some of this as well. So are we able to object to this on the basis of safety when Highways haven't said so, because it's not in the red line, and also when there are precedents of it being implemented elsewhere?
Chairman, if the committee wished to refuse this on highway safety grounds and it was to get to an appeal, the local highway authority obviously wouldn't come along and support the council. We could try and secure a highway consultant to give evidence to support that reason, but because it's a technical, highways is a technical issue, obviously the applicant, Aldi, will bring along their highway engineer, and they'll rely on the fact that the local highway authority haven't objected. So it is an uphill struggle, but it is a possibility if we could find, say, a highway consultant who is willing to support that reason for refusal.
Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. There's a comment from the Highway Authority about rat running. And again, we're back to traffic finding the shortest route. I go past regularly the entrance to Sainsbury's off the roundabout, off the new roundabout, which I think was opened in September. I think you said earlier on.
Works completed, yes.
Yes,
all of those
September.
works September.
And the rat running, the barrier was open sometime in May or earlier last year. I am concerned that people will use that as a rat run because constantly the traffic trying to get into Sainsbury's is backing back onto Europa Way. And so people coming down Queensway who want to go to Sainsbury's will use that as a rat run. That's just the way that traffic that goes, and we've discussed that on one of the previous applications tonight, that traffic will find the easiest route. I'm combining that with the fact that we've then got a safety issue on part of that rat run, the first part of it, because you actually go past where all the pedestrians are walking. So I've got a double concern here. Are we able to get any assessment on, with the new Europa Way roundabouts open, of what the likelihood would be of rat running through that in the same way as they tested it earlier, through a test over a particular period of time or something like that?
So in terms of the application, you're right. So the barrier was up at one point, and as part of that, the applicant noted there didn't appear to be any issues in terms of people going through the site. However, the Highways Authority has said there would also be capacity. So if people were going through onto Queensway, back to the roundabout, there is capacity on the highways network to accommodate for that. So they've not objected to it from a highway safety perspective.
Okay, so but that would increase traffic going through the site past the what we deem to be higher risk pedestrian walkway, if I've understood you correctly there.
So it considers, even if it was to occur, the Highways Authority, there would be capacity. So at the moment, we've got some information from the applicant that it didn't appear to occur when the barrier was up previously. But from a highway safety perspective, as it meets the public highway, highways have not objected on safety grounds.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms Weatherston, for the report. Is there any, I know this is private land, is there any speed restriction in the car park at all? And is it possible to condition that there should be?
Not that I noticed as part of my site visit in terms of any speed signs up through the car park area.
I think the question on that is private land. You put a speed limit on it, who polices it? And it's just a matter of putting a sign up. Councillor Gifford.
Yes, it's clear that none of us, nobody's happy with the pedestrian facilities on the site in this committee, but also we're not keen to go to appeal if we can avoid it. And I was wondering whether if we deferred for more consultation with Aldi to ask why they, to see if they can come up. We can't, as Nigel Bell has pointed out, we can't redesign in committee, but we could have defer to have for Aldi to come back with a design that actually does try and respect the pedestrians, safety. And I just wonder whether that would be a sensible way of proceeding rather than just going for refusal.
I think the issue you've got is that Aldi have gone back to their consultants and come up with a response saying there's not a problem. So they're hardly likely to change their view. So the only thing we could perhaps do is, if we're concerned about it, is for us to take advice as to is there anything we can do about it before we grant. Councillor Sinnott.
Yeah, slightly building at a tangent here. How do HGVs access and egress the sites? And is there any manoeuvring on sites?
So in terms of the access for HGVs, it is from Queensway, and the loading bay is, you can just see just here. Sorry, I'll just get the pointer for you. So this is the access for HGVs. This is the loading bay just here at the front of the store. So in terms of the access, they'd be coming in from Queensway, they'd reverse into here and then exit via Queensway. And no objection's been raised from the Highways Authority to any of the changes to the access, which is part of the County Council access works up at Queensway.
Okay. Obviously, there's manoeuvring going on. I see articulated lorries in some of the pictures. Now, cars are dangerous, but HGVs in pedestrian areas is another order of hazard, and that would spark some concerns here with me anyway.
I think you've got the issue. That's already how it's been operating since it opened. I mean, I remember why we closed this entrance off and said people wouldn't go in that way. And they had to come in the one entrance, so I was absolutely amazed to see this planning application reverting back to where they started off in the first place. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I would like to take up the suggestion that we seek further advice about the safety of this option before we determine this application. If you look at policy TR1, paragraph C, it says we aim to create safe and secure layouts for motorised vehicles, cyclists, pedestrians and public transport, and integrate the access routes into the overall development. And this is about the overall development. And clearly, if it's a very good pedestrian pavement along the highway, and then you come into this sort of free-for-all within the development, strikes me as being very dangerous. And I think we ought to get further advice from a transport expert if the Highways Authority is unwilling to comment because it's on private land before we decide.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thought, although you look at the retail park and it's a free-for-all all over it. So you've got
but
one...
Should we not be encouraging people to move beyond the free-for-all that may have been appropriate in the 1960s, but in the second quarter of the 21st century, I think we ought to be thinking a bit more imaginatively about how places are designed for safety.
This is even worse now because of the volume of traffic. Is there any advice on what we can do?
Yes, I think deferment would be, I'm sure the applicant would rather have deferral than a refusal. So yeah, deferment to seek further advice from the local highway authority.
Or a traffic consultant.
And as well for Aldi to decide whether they want the reputational risk.
So that's a proposal that we defer. We seek advice.
Yes, in order to seek advice from the Highways Authority or a suitably qualified transport consultant.
That seems reasonable. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dixon caught my eye. Well, just happened to be looking that way. So we have proposal to defer and to seek advice either from the Highways Authority or from a traffic transport qualified person. All those in favour? I move on to the final item of the agenda tonight. Item 7, and it's 9 o'clock, so you're quite happy for me to continue with this, are you? So it's item 7, W/25/1061, 60 Brandon Parade, Royal Hampton Spa.
Thank you, Chair. The last application before members this evening is at 60 Brandon Parade, Leamington Spa. The application seeks permission for a new ramped access, children's play equipment with associated works to include hard standing, boundary treatments and landscaping. It should be noted that the works are part retrospective. The application has been brought to committee due to the number of objections received. The site outlined in red is a detached property accessed off Brandon Parade and William Street. The aerial image shows a Grade 2 listed property which is located within the Royal Leamington Spa Conservation Area. Moving to the drawings, on the left we've got the existing site plan and on the right the proposed. As you can see, the extent of the landscaping, ramped access and children's play equipment. The elevations show the extent of the ramp details, and the next slide shows the extent of the play equipment. Moving to the proposed fence and gate details, image of the front of the site. To the rear, as you can see, the boundary treatments have now been erected. And moving to a summary of the main points. The works are not considered to have a detrimental impact on the heritage asset. The proposals are considered to have an acceptable impact on neighbour amenity, an acceptable impact on parking and highway safety. Members should note permission isn't required for the change of use, as both uses fall within Class E. It is simply only the development to facilitate the change of use. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval. I would like to draw members' attention to the ADOBS report and the input from the Environmental Health Officer regarding noise. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no speakers, so it's Councillor Gifford.
Yes, I actually went and visited the site, and it's a fine listed building. It's in good condition. It's been well looked after. But it's a nursery, and they obviously want to provide for the kids that were going to the nursery. It's the equipment is all going to be in the back garden. The fencing is already there. It's not. I went to William Street as well, and could see the back. Obviously, given it's a nursery, I didn't sort of peer through the fence, but it's not something that's easily. It's not easily visible. It respects the listed building. I would propose that we accept, that we grant as per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. I have a proposal. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Phillips is seconding. Councillor Yella-Pragada.
It was just a question. Does the ramp meet accessibility standards? It's just a simple question.
That would be something that falls outside of the planning remit. It would probably be more for sort of health and safety regulations, in which the nursery would need to adhere to in any instance.
That's okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Has anyone got anything particular to add, or can we move straight to the vote? So we have a recommendation to approve as set out in the officer's report. There was nothing suggested in the ADOBS to change, was there?
No, it was just confirmation from Environmental Health regarding the noise.
So all those in favour of accepting recommendations? That's unanimous, so it's clearly carried. We've not quite finished because we've got the report on, I can't remember what it's called now, appeals report, which is always very interesting reading. It's getting more and more detail on them, to be quite honest. So has anyone got any questions? Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, it's on 241404, the solar farm at Bradford Seminary. It says that the statement is due on the 11th of December. Have we had that statement, or where are we on this?
Yeah, so that would be the council statement is due. That's the deadline set by the planning inspector for the submission of statement. You mean, have we had the appellant statement?
Yeah, so it was submitted then.
It should be, well, that's the deadline, so we should have, it should be on, have you checked the the website?
No, I'm afraid not.
Okay.
I just saw that comment and thought,
Yeah, it's a shame Adam's not here, because he's the case officer. I'll check that tomorrow and then get back to you.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No, in that case, come on, yes.
I have been through the report. 250229, the appeal was dismissed, but the costs claim was partially allowed. I don't quite understand that.
So yes, so for this appeal, if I just bring it up, on the screen. So in terms of the works that we had, we did have an appeal. We looked at the application in the green belt. It was a planning in principle application, so we can only consider principle of development, and it was for up to 3 dwellings. We didn't have the final details. It's a bit like outline and reserve matters. And because of where it was in the green belt, we had to assess it against the grey belt assessment and the tilted balance as a whole when we're looking at it from an officer perspective as part of the assessment. So we had concerns about green belt. It was inappropriate development in the green belt. In terms of grey belt, it didn't meet all of the tests in our view. And then we also had concerns that the grey belt assessment asked for safe and suitable access as part of the principal matters. So from the appeal decision, the inspector agreed on the green belt grounds and supported that approach by the council. The appeal was dismissed, but didn't agree on the access arrangements and thinks because it's a permission in principle application, that should be a technical detail and should be considered at a later date. So in terms of the partial award of costs, it was to do with incorporating as part of the grey belt assessment some of the access matters into the overall assessment when we looked at it as a whole. So that's the reason for the slight differentiation between the appeal being dismissed and the cost being partially awarded.
It is a bit odd because we win the appeal, but we get costs, but one is not reliant on the other. So as long as they can demonstrate unreasonable behaviour, even if we've, because the decision to refuse was correct, but because we'd gone slightly outside the scope of what you can consider under a permission in principle application, that was deemed to be unreasonable behaviour. So, but the cost will be only related to that particular part of the appeal.
Thank you.
So it might be inexpensive. That concludes the meeting. All business now done, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance.